when we experience divorce, all of our wounds, anything that's unprocessed, anything that hasn't been looked at, comes up to the surface because it might be for the first time in a long time, depending on how long you were together in that marriage, the first time you're really alone and really seeing yourself and only hearing yourself.
Mhm.
And there's complicated grief to that as well.
Welcome to Divorce Diaries, where attorney Cary Jacobson brings you real stories, hard truths, and practical advice on navigating divorce and family law. Whether you're going through it, considering it, or just curious, this is your place for clarity, confidence, and resilience.
Welcome back to another episode of Divorce Diaries, Lessons from the Trenches, where we talk about the mess, the meaning, and the moments of clarity that come with life after divorce. I'm your host, Cary Jacobson, family law attorney, mediator, and passionate about helping people through the process in the most peaceful manner possible. Today, we're exploring something that often hides behind the surface of our breakups: insecure attachment. Why we chase, why we may shut down, and why it often feels like love may never feel safe. Our guest, Danielle Bird, a somatic trauma recovery guide who works at the intersection of neuroscience, attachment repair, and nervous system regulation. Danielle helps individuals and couples unlearn old survival patterns and root back into their body's original blueprint for love and connection. She's also the creator of the No Matter Who's Watching Circle, a space devoted to embodied healing and authentic expression. Danielle, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful introduction.
Thank you. Can you please explain to our listeners how insecure attachment may shape our relationships, especially in the context of divorce?
Absolutely. That is such a good question. And one of the main things I like to bring forward when we talk about attachment in general is that there can often be a lot of shame felt as an adult in the recognition of, ooh, I do feel insecure, as maybe you're in your 50s, right? You're in your 60s, you've lived quite a life, and so you can kind of feel behind in that way. But in reality, in the body, in the nervous system, in our neurology, the way that our attachment is seeded is so early on in our experience of life. Oftentimes, the foundation is created between the ages of 0 and 2. And you don't have a say with how you're being anchored in to which attachment style at that time. And so it is one of the almost only things that you actually haven't chosen for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It is entirely reliant on how other people responded to you in your early years. And so oftentimes what happens is that in moments where we have crisis, whether that is a divorce, whether that is any type of traumatic experience that is shocking or unexpected, can also be what we don't receive too.
Mm-hmm.
These wounds come up and they could have been hidden for the majority of your life. You may not have been aware. A lot of the times they can seem like they are part of our personality. In actuality, they are wounds stuck in our body. And so the different types of attachment will show up at different times for different people, for lack of a better word, whether that is feeling anxiously attached, so needing that close proximity and suffocating the other partner without intentionally doing so, not really understanding what's happening inside of the body that leads us to do that, or being on the opposite side where we aren't paying attention to them. We're quite spacious in our interaction, which is called a dismissive avoidant. There's also a type where we oscillate between the two, kind
Mm-hmm.
of like a roller coaster that we're not really sure what way it's about to turn, and that's called the fearful avoidant. And that is a mix of both. It's also what is known as the disorganized attachment. And when we experience divorce, all of our wounds, anything that's unprocessed, anything that hasn't been looked at, comes up to the surface because it might be for the first time in a long time, depending on how long you were together in that marriage, the first time you're really alone and really seeing yourself and only hearing yourself.
Mhm.
And there's complicated grief to that as well.
Right. How does someone find out what type of attachment personality they may have?
I love this question. There's a lot of different ways that you can actually do that, but one of the easiest ways I find is just introspecting on how do you respond to conflict
Hmm.
specifically. And it doesn't actually only need to be in a romantic setting. It doesn't have to be that way. It can also be with your family, with your coworkers, with uh, your boss, with your neighbors. Because attachment style isn't just romantic; it's literally how we relate to anything, your own body included. So there's lots of layers to this. But if you experience conflict by wanting to really cling and feeling like I'm going to be abandoned, right? Let me become what I think this other person really desires of me so that they'll stay with me. And then you stay really close to them so that you can monitor. It's called hypervigilantly, like scanning every nuance of them to confirm that we're okay, right? That they're
Right.
not going to leave me, that they want me, that they're going to choose me. We become very preoccupied with that, almost like when horses are running races and they have those blinders on. We're just tunnel vision on them. And we lose our sense of self in that. This is because growing up, there was inconsistency in the parenting. So parents were there sometimes, there weren't other times, and we weren't really sure what was happening. There was lots of inconsistency. Maybe you actually were abandoned, or there was just perceived abandonment. That shows up a lot of the times for a parent who might physically be there, but they're not actually present.
Right.
So there's that felt sense of abandonment. Really waiting for the shoe to drop, that sensation. Like I can't relax. I need to constantly be on, if you
Right.
will. Really feeling like you have to show up perfectly or else your partner will leave you. So you stay close. And
Hmm.
then in that, you really push them away. That, if that resonates with you, that's an anxious, preoccupied attachment.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you are a dismissive avoidant and conflict occurs, your inner world probably looks like, this isn't my responsibility. Why is Cary so upset? Why is she making me deal with her feelings? These are not mine to soothe. It's not my responsibility. I even feel overwhelmed by your expression and desire for closeness because especially when it's in the form of accountability. But this is because actually dismissive avoidance parents profoundly neglected them emotionally. And so if you're a dismissive avoidant as an adult, the other partner's desire for closeness, especially emotionally, it triggers in them this unprocessed shame wound of overwhelm.
Hmm.
And so what happens is that in a dismissive avoidant, they go, ooh, this inner awareness of my overwhelm of you asking me to hold your feelings makes me feel like I'm not good enough. And so I can't express that because I'm overwhelmed with that shame
Hmm.
and I'm flooded with that. And so I shut down. And so what happens on the surface is that we see dismissive avoidant partners pull away. They might even look like they're cold or they don't care.
Hmm.
That is not the reality of what's happening inside of their body. They really care. They don't know what to do with that. They don't have the emotional literature to be able to understand what's happening inside and express that because there's so much shame. And shame as an emotion, yes, the antidote is to express it, but it takes a lot of bravery and it takes a lot of nervous system capacity to
Hmm.
hold because it's so debilitating to our system. It moves us very quickly into a freeze response. And so if you grew up very neglected, then that pattern repeats not only to yourself, right? I'm not expressing my needs. I'm pushing them down, but also to the partner in front of me. So I will neglect you as well. So
Right.
the dismissive really pulls away, the anxious really pulls towards, And then the fearful avoidant is a mix of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And with the disorganized attachment, the fearful avoidant, this is where you have the highest amount of what are known as the trauma responses, right? We talk about survival patterns. We're really talking about the fight nervous system state, the flight, the
Mm-hmm.
freeze, the fawning, which is the people pleasing or appeasing, and the shutdown nervous system trauma response. And so this pattern of attachment will oscillate between the two. So there will be perhaps a very strong reactive blowing up, right? The dismissive avoid, or sorry, not the dismissive avoidant, but the disorganized attachment is not afraid of conflict. They actually will move into it. However, it's very chaotic. This is the pattern that is actually the most misunderstood as narcissistic, but it's not narcissistic because they actually care. And narcissists, real true narcissists, don't. They're not having that introspective moment. But on the surface, it can seem very self-centered because it's so argumentative.
Mm-hmm.
And so they oscillate really between blowing up in that fight way, especially cutting with words, to fully shutting down their nervous system states, not sharing their inner experience, and really reactively setting boundaries or sharing about their needs, and then dismissing their own inner experience in that. So inside of a disorganized attachment is this yearning almost incessantly, almost obsessively, to have closeness,
Mm-hmm.
but simultaneously not sharing, not coming forward, not bringing anything to the other person.
Got it. So that's very interesting. And all of that is based on things that may have happened to someone when they were very young and didn't even really know that these things were impacting them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you explain the link between the attachment trauma and the nervous system dysregulation?
Absolutely. So when someone has an attachment wound, what that looks like in the body is imprinting, sort of like if you step on cement before it's solidified, right? There's imprinting there of both unprocessed primary emotions. So whether it is overwhelm, whether it is devastation, whether it is panic, whether it is confusion, right? Because imagine a child is born and they're not receiving what they need as basic necessities,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have the language or even the neurology to understand what's happening. They don't have the ability to go, this isn't about me,
Right.
right? So they internalize it, they imprint it into themselves. And so what that looks like is stuckness. And that's another word to say trauma. Trauma isn't an experience outside of us. It's actually the imprinting of it in us. It's the clenching, it's the bracing, it's the holding of that in our body system. And so on one piece, it is unprocessed primary emotion that gets stuck. But then we also have the adrenalized nervous system response that gets uncompleted, because to not receive your needs means that, especially at a very young age when we can't externalize, as adults it's a little different but it still works similarly, we become the threat because we hold that imprinting in our body. And so the nervous system, in the most simple terms, what it does is it goes, am I safe or am I not?
Mm.
All day in many different ways, constantly, right? Automatically, whether that's a social interaction, a thought form that you have, an emotional response you're experiencing, whatever it is, it's constantly just going, am I safe or am I not? Am I safe or am I not? And when you hold belief wounds, right? Let's say the parent never checked in on you and emotionally neglected you, you are going to have a belief wound of I'm not, because it makes sense to believe that that would be the reason why they're not showing up. It must be me. And so when you have belief wounds and they get housed in your unconscious, in your subconscious, in your body, because you're so young, right? You're not even consciously engaging yet. It stays there until you rewire it. And so as an adult, you hold all of these different wounds in your body and you're like, why am I getting so triggered during the day? Why am I so activated? Why does this irritate me so much? Why do I just feel so sad, so depressed, so anxious? It's because you have kind of like a smorgasbord of different wounds that are still in your body and they'll stay there. And so what happens is all throughout the day, you have certain cues in your mind with this part of your brain that's called the amygdala.
Mhm.
I like to think of it like the red flag center. And it holds all of those red flags. And anytime you come close to any sensory cue that looks like that red flag, it immediately speaks to your nervous system. Your nervous system says, okay, there's an attack, on guard. Okay, but there's nothing happening outside of you. The attack is inside
Mhm.
the system. And so those survival patterns of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and shutdown are constantly pumping, right? Cortisol, stress hormones through your body. And so you start to brace, but you're not bracing from life, you're bracing from your own inner experience. And what happens is that the neurology that you have, right, the system of how the nervous system works, keeps it in place. And this is by what we call the reticular activating system. I like to call it the razzle dazzle, but it's this filter between the subconscious. So the subconscious is in the body, and then the conscious mind, like we're talking right now. And what it does is that it programs this part of your brain that's called the default mode network. So let's say what the system does when it's just on automatic, right? So defaulted, what is it just doing in the background, right? So what happens is that whatever belief wounds you hold in your body and your subconscious, I'm not good enough, the razzle dazzle, the reticular activating system, is going to confirm throughout your day that belief. And it does that because it's efficient, because it also does that for positive beliefs, right? So it does serve us, but when we hold that trauma, it really doesn't, because the nervous system's constantly getting threat cues, right? And so science calls this, right, the confirmation bias.
Right.
They call it the placebo effect. Spirituality calls it manifesting. Like we're all talking about the same thing in different industries, different fields. And it's that whatever you hold in your body subconsciously becomes the program that you seek out. And so your partner could do 7 things in the day that disprove that belief wound, but you're not going to pay attention to that. You're only going to pay attention to the one moment that they confirmed a subconscious wound, until you actually get to rewire that subconsciously.
And how do people go about rewiring?
Yes, I love that. There's so many different ways to rewire. What I do with my clients is that we get to know what their senses are the most.
Mhm.
As some people prefer to rewire the belief, or the thought, or the action, or the emotion. But one of my favorite tools for this is not only the auto suggestion reprogramming, which I'll tell you about, but also what I like to call CPR, for emotional processing. Because what happens when we get activated into these survival responses is that we live in our head, because the nervous system says, I'm unsafe, but it's the body that's unsafe. So we won't live where the pain is.
Mhm.
So we will basically be cut off at the neck and try to process our emotions in our mind and get overwhelmed by that, because we're only using our head
Right.
as a spatial, like our head is so small compared to the rest of our body. And so what I like to do with clients is that we get really good at metabolizing emotions. And I can actually share that resource with you if you want, for free. I'll give you the link for that. It's called CPR. 3 really easy steps to emotionally process. It's beyond the scope of what we can dive into in this conversation, but I recommend anybody just take screenshots of it, keep it on your phone so that you can just have that in your pocket and you can try it anytime. But for an easy rewiring tool is autosuggestion, where you take any belief wound that you have, right? It could be, I am disconnected, I am not good enough, I am abandoned. And it can also be, I will be. So I am or I will be. What you want to do is you want to start to utilize this when your subconscious is most active. So that's either an hour within waking up, an hour before going to bed. You know, when you're kind of sleeping and you're loopy, you wake up, you're still loopy. That's actually an indication that your subconscious is more active. Where you kind of wake up like in a dream almost, right? Your subconscious is more active during those times. It can also happen after you get into a flow state. So maybe a flow state for you is like watching a movie that you really like. Could be meditation, could be a walk outside. It looks different for everyone, but you don't want to do it during your work day because your conscious mind is more active.
Right.
So that's first. And then let's say we go with the example of I'm not good enough. We want to switch it to the positive, not because I want you to gaslight yourself or we're going with toxic positivity, but because the subconscious takes things literally. Because if I say, don't think of a pink flower, what are you thinking about?
Pink flower.
Right. It just takes it literal. So it's not to gaslight yourself into, I believe that I'm beautiful, but like, just that's what you're really inputting into that program. So you want to go, I am good enough, and you want to go because. And what you want to do is you want to find experiential evidence across as many areas of your life as you can for moments where you actually have felt good enough. Because the razzle dazzle, the reticular activating system, there are moments where you have felt good enough, but you have not highlighted them because of the belief wound. So if you take a moment to really just, okay, pause. When was the last time I felt good enough? Or when across my whole life have I felt good enough? You can go in there and find those experiences. That might look like, oh, I felt good enough when I was driving in the coffee line and someone bought my coffee, right? It can be an experience just like that. So you put that experience down, you write that down. You can also say it in front of the mirror. You can do it while you're dancing. There's many different ways you can do it. So you write that down. I am good enough because the girl paid for my coffee the other day. And then what you want to do, because you're utilizing your visualization through this, because you're revisiting memory, and the subconscious language isn't this type of language. That's quite why you saw the flower. It's actually visualization, sensation, and emotion. And where do we see all of those? In memory.
Right.
Yeah. And so we bring in the memory in that moment. I'm good enough because she bought me a coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to drop into feeling. How did I feel in that moment? So still revisiting the memory.
Mm-hmm.
I felt elated. I felt
Grateful.
surprised, right? Yeah, grateful. Exactly. And then you want to drop into, okay, and then physiology. What did I feel in my body?
Mm-hmm.
How did I experience those feelings in my body? So we want to go into that somatic language of, I felt like my chest started to open up. I felt like I started to feel lighter. I wanted to like dance a little bit. I started to move my spine a bit more. And what we're doing there is we're speaking the language of the nervous system, because the nervous system's in our body, right? It's the brain and the spinal cord, but the majority of your information pathways in your nervous system actually go from your extremities and your organs to your brain. 80% of them are going from your muscles and the rest of your body up to your brain, versus 20% are going from your brain downwards. This is why, if you feel unsafe, you can't gaslight yourself into feeling safe.
Mm-hmm.
Your body's saying, I'm having a different experience. I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't feel good, right? But we can show our mind that we're safe. We can show our mind that we can feel good. And that's what this auto suggestion does. And so what you want to do is flip it to the positive. I am good enough. Experiential evidence across as many areas of your life as you can. You want to go for anywhere between 5 to 15 per day. You don't have to do it morning and night. Just choose one and commit and be consistent, because the wounds were programmed through consistency. So they're going to be reprogrammed through consistency as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the emotion, the body sensation specifically. And that's what it does. That's how it works. That's one way to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, as we're about to wrap up, what advice would you give someone who may feel stuck in the same like painful relationship loop, which I'm assuming has to do with their attachment style, even after they've gone through a divorce process?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So if you are stuck in the same painful loop, it is because there is a belief wound. Another way to say that is there is a part of your consciousness. There's a part of you inside that is stuck in that response. It's stuck in the memory, in a very embodied state of that experience. And so one, the emotional processing PDF that I'll send a link to, that get really good at doing that, because what it does is essentially you connect with that experience of stuckness, you go into your body through some prompts that I have, and you explore that and you move that energy naturally. Because what happens is that people go, I feel shitty and I just want to move through it. But what we want to do is, I feel awful in my body. I actually create space for it. And then without forcing and allowing myself to be curious of it, it naturally is going to change. And then I'm not resisting something.
Right.
because it's never the stuckness, it's the resistance of it that creates the perpetuation of it. And the stuckness is actually, it could be a younger part of you that has no verbal language to it.
Right.
And so we want to repair that, right? If the challenge is the disconnect, the stuckness is a representation of a disconnect somewhere in your inner system. And so what we want to do is we want to repair that by experientially and embodied teaching that part that to remember that you're whole. And that creates an embodied remembrance of that. So there's lots of different ways to do it, and it kind of sounds paradoxical, but I promise it works.
No, I appreciate that. That's very helpful. And we'll be sure to link that resource in our show notes. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for helping us see that those secure attachments isn't just luck. It's something that we have to practice. And it starts with our nervous systems. For those listening, how can people find out more about you and your services?
Absolutely. You can find me across any social, usually TikTok or Instagram, at the Danielle Bird. So TheDaniellebird. Or you can find me on my website, which is just www.daniellebird.com. So first, last name. And yeah, check out the CPR resource. That's going to support you in really getting beyond that stuckness into your body in a safe way so that you can complete emotional cycles, which is the number one thing that will regulate your nervous system, is completing those emotional cycles.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for our listeners, be sure to subscribe to Divorce Diaries, Lessons from the Trenches, and share with anyone who may find this as a great resource. I'm your host, Cary Jacobson, and until next time, stay grounded and take care of your heart.
Thanks for joining us today on this episode of Divorce Diaries. Remember, every journey is unique, but you don't have to navigate it alone. Visit JacobsonFamilyLaw.com or call 443-726-4912 for support and guidance.